This meeting is being recorded.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back to Academy. We are here today again to continue the program with Giuseppe. For anyone who's following us on Twitter or on YouTube, you can still register at the study season. Go to tokenengineering.net, register, and you'll have full access to all the learning material, to all the recordings, and can even acquire a proof of knowledge. This session today is about dApp analysis, exploring the complex systems-oriented approach with Giuseppe Destefanis. Welcome back again, Giuseppe. And this is the third session already in this program about dApp analysis, dedicated or with a particular perspective, complex systems. Before we start, I'd like to share that we are currently running an EFCC ticket giveaway. So you probably know that we'll be at EFCC in Brussels in July with a full day of token engineering talks organized and curated by Token Engineering Academy. So this is a perfect opportunity to meet all these brilliant token engineers in the study season live. So you'll have the chance to meet Giuseppe, to meet all the other speakers, to meet community members, to meet awesome token engineering researchers and practitioners. And we also know that it's super hard to get EFCC tickets. They are sold out within minutes. And that's why we have this EFCC ticket giveaway, 5 tickets worth €500 each for TE Academy students, so that we have as many community members as possible at the track. You have to recommend our token engineering newsletter bi-weekly. The last one went out on Wednesday. Recommend it, spread the word to your friends, and with a referral link that you can find behind this QR code, you can participate in the giveaway and can win a free EFCC ticket. That's all I'd like to share for today. We have a packed program. So, I'm super excited for the session. Giuseppe, stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Angela, and hi everyone. I will share my screen and open the chat so I can read your messages. So today we are episode number 3, and the focus will be on analyzing decentralized applications at different level of granularity, and it will be clear now when we start what I mean. I also anticipated in the previous episode the difference of analyzing a contract level and a function level. During the first lecture, we had an introduction about complex systems and about the definition of complex system and decentralized application. And during the second episode, we analyzed the like a pseudocode of simple contracts, and we saw how they interact together. We also saw sequence diagrams, all the different contracts working together, and also those external calls, meaning that we can develop a decentralized applications, but we have to deal with the external calls, meaning that we sometimes have to call external contracts which are out of our control, and either we trust the source, so we have to be careful because these calls can introduce vulnerabilities. In the last lecture, then we will add the last perspective, which is related to metrics, and we'll try to understand what metrics can bring in our analysis. Today, I wanted to mention my colleagues because today I will be telling you about several papers and several tools that we've developed in our lab. And my colleagues and friends are also co-authors of the papers that I'm mentioning today. And Dr. Silvia Bartolucci, Marco Artur, Rumiana Nekova, and mainly Dr. Giacomo Iba is the one who developed Minded Up, which will be the focus of today's episode, and Sabrina Ofiero's PhD student, UCL, the responsible of the analysis of the networks, combinatorial approach with the dataset that we have. So we saw last time that we have these two different levels. Contract in a decentralized applications work together, and we can analyze these networks of contracts linked one to the other and how they interact. And we know that these contracts are the backbone of our decentralized applications. But then, if you remember the probably difficult part of our last lecture, during which we analyzed the pseudocode, we saw that there are functions. A contract can have more than one function within itself, and this function can either call each other within the same contract, but they can also call external contracts. These two slides are from the previous lecture that you can see. Today, we will move in try to use and understand all the toolbox that we have for doing this smart contract and decentralized application analysis. There are three main tools that we developed in our lab, and today we will focus on dApp, which is able to extract contract dependencies that we have when analyzing a decentralized application. Then we have another in-house tool, which is called Smart Metrics. We will see this one in the last episode because we will discuss about metrics. And then we have another tool, which is called Dependency Installer Analyzer, because when analyzing smart contracts, there are many dependencies, as I anticipated last time. We can call external contract, external libraries, and sometimes, since we want to build this network in a very precise way, we need to manage all these dependencies, and it can get complicated, especially when the centralized applications are quite large. So it's important that there is a tool supporting us in our analysis. And I will share all the papers with you after the lecture. There is a paper describing the dependency analyzer and the installer for the smart contract, and also my dApp. The paper, we have a paper about the application. And quickly, this picture is showing you what are the components. We have a parser, then we have a data set of decentralized applications. In this paper, we have a data set where there are 66 decentralized applications. Then the other component is and the other step is transforming the source code and the centralized application in abstract syntax tree. I will spend a couple of minutes explaining what this abstract AST is and the definition. And then we can get a CSV file, which is able to create this graph that we saw in the previous episode. And again, as I said, I will share the paper. There is a GitHub link. You can download the tool you can use, and you can play with the tool. And there is also a link to a data set which is already there. And if you don't want to run the tool for analyzing a new app, a new decentralized application, you can use the data set that we provide with the tool and see what's inside. So why we built this tool first? What's the goal, and what is the tool able to do? We saw last time that we can compare the centralized application to a box. We have this box where there are contracts inside. And reading the code, by analyzing the code, we are able to understand how these contracts talk to each other, basically. And if we change the configuration of the box and make the box transparent, we can see out, and we can link also our decentralized application to other libraries or contracts that we have out there. So this tool is very helpful for us for helping us in building that network that we saw in the previous episodes. And this tool starts reading the code and identifying the main elements that we have in the code. For example, all the functions and variables and all the events. And then it starts taking note. Think about a person reading the contract and starting taking note of what are the functions in contract 1, what are the functions in contract 2, and so on. And the interesting part is this, that dApp is able to generate a bipartite graph. I will explain what this one is. But out of curiosity, how many of you know a bipartite graph? Like I've met bipartite graph before. Let me know in the chat or thumbs up in the here on Zoom. Angela. Dimas is first time. Okay, perfect. Then, because I will explain in details also for Victor first time. No problem. You will see now what this graph is. And it's basically, we saw in the first lecture, all those points linked together when there was the representation of the Java system. Each node of the graph was a class, representing a class. In a bipartite graph, nodes represent two sets of entities. So it's not the one that we saw at the beginning, it's quite simple, or the one we saw last time with the example. Nodes were contracts. In a bipartite graph, we have two different types of nodes. So, for example, since I'm stressing contracts and functions, we have one set of nodes which represent contracts and another set of nodes which represent functions, for example. Violet is saying sounds like a neural network because there are the different levels. Not exactly, because those are levels that you have in the neural networks and different layers. We can have different layers also in bipartite graphs, but they are representing different sets of nodes. It's like, for example, function and contracts, or like jobs and people who can take those specific jobs. So it's like a more complicated way of representing relationship in a graphical form. And again, lines or edges are this link showing the different sets working together. And if we visualize this interaction, so we can see a high-level representation of the architecture of the decentralized application. Now, I told you many times, this network perspective, visualizing what's going on with the decentralized application is very helpful because we can identify visually structural problem, architectural problem, issues. Let's call them issues because maybe they don't generate problem, but architecturally you can say this graph doesn't look very nice. And it's like when you observe a building and something is not very good, you can tell visually this building needs a restructuring. Okay, that's the initial goal here. dApp can handle both internal and external call. Internal means that there are calls. Imagine again the box, all the contracts call each other. Those are internal because they are within the box. External is when the box becomes like transparent and I can call something outside. Okay, so for example, I call a library from outside another project. Okay, and in this case, I can identify, the tool is very good at telling me this is a call to an external entity. And that's helpful because as you now are aware, external calls can be more, can be trickier because we don't know who wrote those libraries. So we need to double check that part. Technical part here. Apologies about these technicalities, but they are important. And again, keep in mind that since I'm mentioning many concepts here, I'm simplifying a lot. So the goal here is to give you as many information as possible, so you know that there are specific concepts which might be helpful for like a topic you are studying or something that you are doing. But in 1 hour, providing exactly like all the definition information, it's quite tricky. So take this as a simplification, and if you want to know more about abstract syntax tree, there are books only about abstract syntax tree, so 1 or 2 slides are not enough. However, this AST is a fundamental concept in computer science. It's a representation. Computer scientists love trees, like the representation in a tree form. And it's this representation of the syntactic structure of the source code. Each node is a construct that we have in the code. And if you remember, last time we saw pseudocode and it was written in a specific way, we could identify within the code specific blocks. If you're familiar with Python, for example, Python is very picky as a programming language for the indentation. You can't write the code like how you like. You have to respect space and like the different blocks that you have. The syntax is abstract, meaning that I'm not representing in a tree every details, but the structural content and the structural details. I'll give you an example. Again, simplification here of a contract. I highlighted keywords in different colors and with a logic. You can see simple storage here is the name of the contract. Do you see a pattern here? The green, can you tell me what the green color is representing? A type, exactly. So the green part is showing here a type. You can see that we have stored data, which is a variable, and the type is integer. And then we have a parameter, and the type is integer. And then again, here we have a parameter and the type is integer. So it's showing a type. And then we have one function, and then we have another function here. And the blue here is showing the name of the function. Set is the first function, get is the second function. So there are like you can recognize patterns in code. Even if you are not familiar with code, it's totally fine. It's not a prerequisite, and you don't need to know how to code. But it's like even when reading a book, there are patterns. There are chapters. Usually, you can identify there is a title. There is a title of a chapter. If there are subsections, there are title of subsection. Similar thing. Also when writing code. So we have the simple storage, which is the name. Then we have the variable, which is the type of the variable is integer. And then we have the two function, set and get. And the set allows you to set the value, get function to retrieve the value. And when the tool goes and starts reading that contract, it will basically transform that, like this code that we saw here, in an abstract syntax tree. It's a different representation of the code. How? Here on the left, you have the abstract syntax tree simplified of this contract. And you can see the contract definition is first level, then the identifier here, simple storage. Then here we are representing the variable, okay? We have the type and then the name of the identifier. And then here we have the representation of the function in a tree form. The question would be, why do you want to transform like this contract, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines in such a complicated structure like the abstract syntax tree? And I can keep going here. Here we have the other part. This is, as you can see, I need 2 slides, and the second one I can barely read it, for transforming my beautiful, simple storage contract written with 6 lines. Why do I need to complicate my life here? Any idea? Why do you think that I have to move to this representation? Anyone wants to try? Again, remember, everything is allowed. It's a discussion. We are chatting. So I really welcome hints and suggestions.
Some notes in the chat. You can also switch on your mic, of course. 2 notes.
Absolutely.
Easier to spot errors. One proposal by Violeta. Thank you. And Dima said, easy picture of different levels inside the code.
Okay, yeah, these are interesting suggestions. Easier to spot errors can be, because maybe when moving from like the code to like higher level of details, maybe you can spot errors. Aaron is saying logical representation, and Dimas is a picture of different levels. With the logical representation, we are getting there. It's like this common language for everyone. So I'm transforming a specific, one thing that I didn't say at the beginning is that I can have a representation of I can generate an abstract syntax tree from Java, from Python, from Solidity, from a smart contract. So it's like the target representation of source code for any programming language. It's like this neutral way for representing code. And here I'm sure that I have every single element presented in the code. So variables, functions, types, and so on. And Violetta is saying it's systematic, so everyone else understands it. Not just me. Also, yeah, it's it can be seen like this neutral way of representing code, and there are many tools which relies on abstract syntax trees. So I can use maybe another tool. I can link another tool when I have the abstract syntax tree representation of my contract. It's coding language agnostic representation. Yes, kind of, absolutely, and that's a nice way for putting it. In this slide, you can see an example of output generated by dApp. So we have it's a CSV file. There are 2 contracts here, so it's a very simple decentralized application that we have. Remember, one CSV is related to a decentralized application. So the output of the tool will be one CSV with several columns. The first column is file, because you know that contract, like the centralized application can be written in Solidity, for example. So the first element here is a Solidity file. And the name of the Solidity file is wf9mock.sol. So we can identify, we can say that's a Solidity file that we have in our decentralized application. Then in the second column, we have source contract, and you can see the name. Question: why we have these 2 columns? Why we have file and source contract? Are the 2 columns not the same? let's see if someone can answer here. Do you think I'm replicating the information that I have in the column file here?
Any ideas? Okay, When says the source contract is public.
Thanks, When. Well, all the contracts, we are not looking if they are public or private here because we are analyzing the file. Aaron got the right answer. It's because a file can have multiple contracts. So in one Solidity file, I can have more than one contract. Therefore, I want to keep track of the file which contains that contract. That's why quite often one file contains one contract, but it's not always the case. That's why we have that column. So one file can have more than one contract. And then you can see we have source contract. That's the second column where there is the name of the contract. Then we have the source function, and that source function is a function which is within the source contract, and the target contract is the contract which is called by the source function. It looks complicated here, but we will see now step by step how this CSV is built. So how do we build? We have this data set, and again, we are interested in this part, source contract, and forget for 1 second the source function. We have contract and target contract. If we want to understand the contract level only, we check. We see that source contract is linked with target contract. And then a question here could be, but they are the same. And the answer would be yes, because one contract can call itself. It means that there is one function calling another function in the same contract. Remember, those self loops that we saw in the first lecture, if I'm not mistaken. So we have two levels. Contract level, we forget about source function and we only analyze these two columns. And then we can also play with function level. So if we want to build a contract network, what we do is we create a network for each decentralized application. We know that one contract A can call a contract B because there is a function in A calling B. And that's how we link this point. And then we build a matrix. It's called agency, a little bit dyslexic here, matrix. And this matrix, how many of you are familiar with matrices? I will explain now how we build this. It's a nice way of representing information in maths and computer science and operational research and physics. They are extremely powerful tool. And we can represent a graph with the matrix. So a matrix is extremely powerful tool for representing graph. Like that graph, which was very big and complicated, that can be a matrix, which is extremely elegant. Matrix is used to build a network, and rows in a matrix represent the source contracts, and the column, the target contracts. So we have the source and in the row, and in the column, we have the target. And then we put numbers. It's like Sudoku, a similar type, or tic-tac-toes, like we play there are rules and we build a matrix. If a function from the source contract I is calling contract J, then in that cell where the two are meeting, we put a number. And if there is only one call, we put 1. If there are no calls, we put 0. If there is more than one call, we put like 2 of call that we have. So this matrix is a big table that shows how the different part of the network, smart contracts, can interact. And each row and each column is a smart contract, and we put a number if there are calls between them. Each row and each column are a smart contract. If we have 10 smart contracts, we have 10 rows, 10 columns. How do we track this interaction? Let's call contract A, which is interacting with contract B. If there are functions calling in contract A, calling contract B 3 times, then we put 3. And like a 0, as I told you, is means that contract A and contract B are not interacting. And other than the 0, like the times that this interaction happens. If there's 5, it means that those interactions are happening 5 times. Again, here I'm talking about static view. So when I mention 3 times, 5 times, 1 time, it doesn't mean that dynamically one contract will call another contract only 5 times. I have to stress this. This is a static view, okay? Dynamically, it's completely another world and definitely more complicated. Here we are looking at the so-called static analysis. Why are we doing this? Because with this type of analysis, we can see immediately if there are contracts which are highly connected with others, and I mentioned last time hubs, and immediately we have a picture of what's happening in our network. So here you can immediately see, like this is the representation of the matrix. We have 3 contracts, X, Y, and Z. And here, let's look only at the matrix, not the description. The description is when you read the slides again, but you can see how easy this is. Contract X and contract X. Is contract X calling itself? No, we have a 0. So just looking at this matrix we can picture how the graph is going to happen. Then X and Y is calling Y twice. And X is not calling Z. And then so on, like Y is calling Z once. And we only have this type of interaction. X and Y, Y and Z. And as you can see, with this matrix, computationally, this is extremely powerful because this is a network. So we see a bunch of numbers and maybe we don't realize immediately, but computer can understand a matrix. Computer is not able to understand that big graph, the picture, that it's very informative for us, but not for a machine. But in this case, we can translate the concept of like the graph with columns and rows and numbers. And then we can perform. Matrices are fantastic. All the properties and all the calculation that we can do with the matrices. Now we move to the second level. Before moving there, is everything clear so far? Because this second part, I apologize, is a little bit more complicated, but I want to get an understanding if you got the representation and what I said so far. If not, remember that you can stop me anytime. Questions so far? Clear? Thanks, Victor. Demas, very good. Okay, it seems that like the theory so far is okay. Function. So contract and contracts are easy because we have rows, we have columns. That matrix is treating the same entities. How can we build a function network? And remember, functions are part of a contract. And how do we represent a graph of functions? There's a question. Do you always use the graph without the connection, or do you ever have a reason to prove it? Thank you very much for this question. I will answer in a bit because I have 2 slides which will explain this concept, hopefully in a nice way. But Giuseppe, thank you very much for the question because it's very interesting. So what Giuseppe is asking is, can we simplify the representation? Like, do we keep the matrix like as big as it can be, as it can get, or we know that we can focus our analysis in a specific part of the matrix? And the answer is yes, we can, and I will show you why we need to do that. Function network. To understand how these functions interact across the contract, we use the source function that we have in the CSV. Remember, we have file, contract, target contract, source contract, sorry, source function, target contract. So we have a column which is giving us information about function. The interaction of the function is important because, again, we can assess the security of the system and like the fact that vulnerabilities can happen. Here, the matrix is by-agency matrix in this case. It's a little bit more complicated. I will try to explain again. Simplifying the concept, I can't stress this enough. I'm simplifying as much as possible. If there are mathematicians, physicists listening, they will kill me. But I'm simplifying the concept to try to give you an idea. Again, in this case, we are considering our bipartite graph because we have 2 different sets here. We have source functions where they are in the rows, and target contracts as column. In the previous examples, we only had contracts. We have rows and columns, and all of them are contracts. This time, like the rows are changing. They are functions, and the columns are contracts. 0 means that a function is not calling a contract, where there is, if there is 1, it means that that function is calling that specific contracts. This is called weighted bipartite graph, and we have function on one layer and contracts on the other one. And there is an operation that we can perform. It's called projection. Projection means that we can really project a layer, because remember, we have 2 layers, okay? Functions one side, contract in another side, and projecting one layer to the other layer can help providing us specific information. If we project, because I told you that we want to focus on function interaction here, focusing on function means that we are projecting everything in one layer, and nodes in the network that we obtains are representing functions, and the edges are representing the interaction between, like, among functions. And in this case, the one mode projection is a simplification, okay? Because otherwise we have that graph which has 2 sets. When we project, we simplify the graph. But in this case, since we are dealing with different entities, we need methodologies for understanding the edges, weighting the edges in the projected network. And I will for example, in our study and the study that Sabrina, for example, performed, there is a probabilistic spreading approach. I will tell you in simple words what's the meaning of this. And the message here is, however, you can find, you can choose a way for simplifying or projecting the graph and focusing on a specific characteristic. Do you always use the graph with all of the connection, or do you ever? Sorry, this is the question that we got before. Sorry, I thought that it was it's the same question. I thought that there was a new question here. Apologies. What's this probabilistic spreading approach? Simply speaking, imagine you are in a room. In this room, there are people, and you whisper like a secret. You say a secret. You tell a secret to one person. Then the person tells to two other people, and then the other people two more. So the secret, the message is spreading from one person to the other. It's like gossip. Imagine like group of friends gossiping about each other. This is called probabilistic spreading approach in a very simplified way again. Can we relate the room where there is a party, where all these people speaking and telling a secret and the functions? Each person in the room is a function in a smart contract. And whispering the secret from one person to the other is a function calling another function. This is these are the similarities. However, there are people who are more popular than others, and if one person is more popular than another, that person can whisper the secret to more people. Okay, is it clear? So it means that a function, if a function is mimicking the popular person, can be called more often, because that one is the most popular, and it's like whispering the secret to more people in the room. So we have contract A, contract B, and contract C. Contract A has function 1 and is calling contract B. Contract B has a function that calls contract C, and then contract A, a function that calls contract C directly. This is a contract network. Do you all agree with me here? This is the first example. I have all these functions linking the contracts together. So this is the contract, the first example. Now, let's go to the second level. Here, this bi-agency matrix is representing our bipartite graph. So the graph where nodes are divided in two sets. And our edges here are linking nodes from different sets, function and contracts. In our example, we have, I told you, the rows can be the function and the columns can represent the contract. If there is a connection, we put a number. Look here, we have contract A, contract B, and contract C in like as columns, and rows we have F1, F2, and F3. When we want to create the contract, we start putting the number where there is a link. We know that like function 1 here is calling a contract B, function 2 contract C, function 3 is calling contract C as well. Okay, and I told you about projection. When we want to use only one, we want to simplify, we want to get information only from the functions, we look only at the functions, but we need to understand, we have to find the rule for linking these functions. Here, this is the function that we get, And we know the function 1 is linked to function 2 because it calls contract B, which is calling in turn contract C. Therefore, we have this chain of calls. And function 3 is linked to function 2 because both are calling contract C. What we have to agree here is how do we link functions, basically. And we have to find the rule, and after we find the rule, we build the projection. When we build this function graph, again, don't worry if I'm throwing now many information now. It will be clear after you read all the papers that I give you, and of course, I'll be available for on Discord for answering all the questions. The links that we have between function 1 and function 2 are representing a direct interaction here between the contract B and contract C. And it doesn't mean that function 1, function 2, and function 3 are in the same contract, okay? The link is actually showing the interaction patterns. So what I want to stress is that the links that we have within the functions here are not telling us that those functions are within the same contract, but that they are somehow connected because, for example, I decided to use a rule which links a function 1 and function 2 if both are calling a contract, the same contract, okay? So you have to decide the rule and then you can project. This is quite important. What are the findings that we got from our preliminary empirical analysis? The network of the contract presents, in general, a low degree. So each contract is linked with only a few others. Think about room and people within the room. People are linked to fewer other people in the room. Density is low. The density of the contract network is low, meaning that the number of interaction is lower than the total possible. So if all the contracts were connected to each other, the density would be very high. But we have a low density here, saying that the actual interaction that we have are lower than the total possible we can have. There are set loops, meaning that there is a portion of nodes engaging in self-interaction. I told you at the beginning that self-interactions are okay, but if we have many self-interactions, we need to worry because it means that the responsibility of a single contract is too high. And we have to break and delegate. That's a nice principle in software engineering. Having got contracts is not okay because we are basically generating a single point of failure here. This is an example of a representation of a contract network. The decentralized application is called AVE, and we have it's in the data set, so you can download it and you can play with it. The nodes in blue are those with self loops, and these are isolated, and they are peripheral nodes, meaning that they, in this case, they do not interact with other contracts. Function networks. Now you can see here we have this saying post filter and pre-filter, and this is related to the pruning question. This is an example of function network, the same decentralized application, and this is showing how functions are interacting. There are many self loops here, and then we apply the disparity filter. On the right, we have the network after we apply the disparity filter. What's a disparity filter? There is a technical definition. It's quite complicated. You can read all the definition, but I want to give an example. This is the tube map like the of central London, and you can see there are all the lines and all the stations, and this is the central line. This is pruned. So this is before pruning, this is after pruning. I think probably here it's easier to get the message. It shows that I want to focus on a specific line in this example, so I'm deleting all the other, I'm filtering out all the other information that are not relevant for me. So what the question before was about pruning is like, do I need all the information here? No, really, because if I want to use only the central line, then I focus only that one. This is the meaning of filtering. Applying filters can help us understanding what's happening in a network. So it's quite interesting. What can we understand from the function network? We have an increased degree and density. So compared to the contract network, I told you the degree was low, the density was low. In function networks, we have a higher degree of connection, and the density of the network is higher. A smaller fraction of function rely on self-loops, so the number of self-loops is lower. And the modularity, we try to understand the modularity. Again, Louvain modularity, what is it? You have a network and you want to understand if in this network there are clusters within. It's like, imagine you go like a school, population of a school. If you take the school completely, all the students, they are all students of the same school. But then there are clusters, because you have classes, different classes. So one student belongs to the school, the entire network, but also to a class. So if we look at the modularity of that network, the modularity is high. We can identify cluster. That's a concept. It goes from -1 to 1. Suggests, in this case, less division. Okay? London Underground at this time is definitely what you would call a dense network. Yeah, absolutely. Then the development partners here. The largest connected component contains the core functionalities, and the analysis also tells us that there are compartmentalization within the decentralized application. Functions are forming discrete groups, and when the complexity of the decentralized application grows, then also the internal structures is intricate. And this is very helpful because it's telling us that we have specialization among the functions, and these functions are dedicated and managing specific tasks. There are also consistent development patterns among the centralized application. And this is interesting because we have different application, different type of decentralized application, but the pattern that we have found in the network of functions are similar. And it means the developers are using shared practices, or there are concerns that they have to face when developing. And this is extremely insightful and helpful because understanding the development patterns in the centralized application is extremely helpful. I will touch quickly on the resilience. We will start from these last points during our next episodes. The resilience of the network is important because you understand what can happen if the structure of the centralized application is targeted, meaning if there is an external attack, for example. So we started simulating the node removal from the network. Say, what happens if I remove this node, which is can be a function in the function network or a contract in the contract network. We can have targeted removal or random removal, meaning that targeted, you decide what to remove, random, you start like nodes are removed at random. And then you try to understand doing this removal if the structure of the DApp keeps like is stable or not. So this information provides insight on the stability and the resilience, not only of the network, but of the decentralized application. These concepts I understand and I appreciate they are complicated. We will come back because these are related to metrics that we will add. I call this onion approach because we started from the complex system definition of the functionality of the centralized application. We went then a little bit deeper, understanding how contracts collaborate and work to each other, collaborate with each other. Then we analyze the function. So we are going deeper in technical details. Then playing with the networks, removing, adding, and trying to understand the structure. And then we will add additional information which are related to the software metrics. For example, line of codes, complexity within the code, and all this information will be linked with the network that we are building. The findings are related to the resilience. When nodes are removed not randomly, then the largest connected component tends to remain more intact when compared to the targeted. Connected component, the largest connected component means that we have function, they are quite stable, they are linked together. This means that the network structure is disrupted when I delete crucial nodes, okay? And the answer will be, well, this is obvious. It can be, but also demonstrating the obvious is fundamental and is important because there can be behavior which are different from what you might think. And we tried also to understand how targeted attacks can work, and removing 2% of the nodes based on the some metrics that we have in the network can lead to disconnection in the network again. So decentralized application can be highly vulnerable to attacks if the target are specific and key functions in the DApp. And this is quite interesting as well. I will start again from the findings during the next episode, but I appreciate that I'm giving you many information. So I will conclude saying that examining the networks from different perspectives provides extremely useful insights for understanding the architecture and the organization of the applications. And combining all these network structures with metrics that are describing the quality and the interaction with the codes is also a useful steps. But then think about adding other layers. I would like to add an additional, we can have a layer of graphs, actually. What if we are able to link to a node, which is representing a contract, the developer, and we are able to understand how a developer is developing a specific part of the code, and we are able to understand the development patterns. And what happens to the developers? Are they contributing across multiple projects? Can we identify the sub-communities? These are key information also for understanding the reliability of the centralized application. Of course, I'm talking about open source context here. But for example, someone wants to invest in a specific project, understanding how reliable a decentralized application can be from like the development perspective can be extremely interesting. And all these analysis can be performed with all the tools that I'm describing. All these informations are available in this paper that the first author is Sabrina Fiero, University College London, PhD students at University College London, and all of us as well. I will share all the papers with you. Again, I want to stress, please don't worry if several concepts today were not extremely clear. I will share the material, slides, and I wanted also to tell you, I'll be available on Discord, but since our last episode will be on the 31st of May, Angela, correct me if I'm wrong, should be we have time. I would like you to play a little bit with the tool, and I will give you all the information on Discord as well. So I will give you data sets. And if someone wants to try to use my dApp with the new dApp, more than welcome. I will be happy to support if something goes wrong. But I will introduce on Discord an open source tool. It's called Gephi. Maybe you are familiar with it, and can easily read CSV files and can plot the network. So I will give you a little bit of more homework after today's class, so you can practice with all the concepts, many concepts that I mentioned today. So Thank you very much for now, and questions.
Just wanted to confirm, now we have 2 weeks until the next session. Final session will take place at May 31st, so in 2 weeks from today, and that's why there's additional time for you to play around.
Exactly. I will write a document with all the information I will upload on Discord, but I wanted to anticipate this. That my dApp is already available in the dataset as well, so you can start playing with it. But I will give you precise instructions so you can, like, practicing with all the concepts that I mentioned today is the best way for understanding that. And I will give you all the instructions, and of course I'll be available also to clarify concepts which might be not easy to understand at first. But again, don't worry, I'm aware that there are many information here, but as I said, the goal is to give you some concept, then maybe you think, oh, I heard about that methodology, and then you can go and look it up and use it if needed. Questions?
While you guys are thinking about your questions, or type it in the chat, I also want to make you aware of how to get the proof of knowledge for this course. So we'll prepare May 31st, there's the final session planned. And after that, we'll open up an online exam so that you can take the online exam. You have around 1.5 weeks until then the NFT minting is open. So you can take the exam, mint your NFT right away. In case you have been successful, you have as many trials as you like. And we hope that many of you will pass the exam and then receive the NFT. And then, which is super important to keep in mind, there's the fellowship voting. So also for anyone who wants to support Giuseppe for winning the fellowship prize, it's even more important that you pass the exam, because then you'll have additional voting power and can vote in the fellowship grant voting, where we are currently in another track defining the voting algorithm, just to let you know. So May 31st, last session, and then online exam to receive your proof of knowledge. Okay, Aaron has a question. I read it out. I guess we can use the tools here or to analyze the voting mechanism we'll deploy. Aaron, that's a good question. I'm not sure if we can easily translate the voting mechanism into this analysis. Since, I mean, we would have, I'm just thinking about, okay, this would require, we have the implementation and then what to be discussed, I would say. I mean, once we discussed first time with Giuseppe, why is this relevant for token engineering? I found it super fascinating to take a look at this approach to analyze code and smart contracts, and then think about what would this mean for the implementations of economic mechanisms and finding economic vulnerabilities. So we would have to discuss how to apply this. Maybe it's hard to apply it directly, but happy to discuss further, Aaron.
Absolutely. Actually, I would like to stress that I'm available also offline, but also colleagues of the lab. So if you are interested and you have ideas which can be, because as I said, I work in a multidisciplinary environment because I'm a software engineer. So maybe I don't have the, for example, economics background. So that someone who finding similarities or understanding the problem, say, oh, maybe this can be applied here. So it's an open field, and research is great because of this, because we can start collaborating from different background, from different fields, and thanks to the internet from everywhere now. So absolutely, the tool here only analyzes source code. So you need files in a folder. A folder is the box where you put all the contracts which are related to that specific application, and then the code is able to the tool is able to transform in abstract syntax tree and then the network. I'm realizing today that I gave you many technical information from the abstract syntax tree, and then all the different graphs and the different layers, the concept of projection. The concept of projection is complicated because, again, it's not straightforward. When you see links between two nodes, you think, okay, there is a link. It means that the two are somehow linked in the code. It might not be the case when looking at functions, as I told you before. So there are concepts which are quite important from the also mathematical point of view. Don't get discouraged. It's and with the reading, things will become clear. Other points that you would like to discuss? From the point of view of network resilience to the attacks, it could be useful to have some functionality repeated, which then introduce different type of vulnerability, for example, to bugs when the repeated functionalities work a bit differently. From analyzing a network, can you come with a conclusion of what would be the optimal trade-off? This is a very interesting question, and it is also this is an open problem which is related to the reliability of a system, and actually the resilience of the attack. You say, we can have functionality repeated. Think about a blockchain. The blockchain is replicating everything all the time, basically. The node in a blockchain has a copy of the ledger, and so on. So the basic implementation says replicate everything as much as possible. So the probability of having and keeping track of what's going on is the maximum. But then you realize, okay, but this system is very difficult to maintain, is extremely expensive from the computational point of view, and all the other points that we are aware of. Then you start optimizing and you say, okay, maybe we can find an optimal number of nodes which can keep track of the blockchain, and then we rely on them. Again, trade-off. What's the optimal number of this node? If we don't trust anyone, the optimal number is every node has a copy. If there are other elements that we start introducing, we can reduce the number of nodes. But it depends on the type of decentralized applications. If it's a decentralized application which has functions which are extremely delicate or important to keep alive, then a type of replication can be considered. But the fact that replicating the functionalities can introduce, can replicate, like the possibility of having banks, is something we have to consider. One answer could be, okay, you ask to replicate that functionality, but you ask, for example, another developer to develop that specific function without knowing how the other developers are developing it. So you differentiate the code. The output will be the same, the style will be different, but the way of behaving for that specific function will be the same. So you refactor. When for the same input you have the same output, it's of course deterministic, but that's the concept of refactoring. Refactoring of the code means you change the code, but the input output are the same. The behavior is not changing. So it's a matter of optimization, architectural stability here, but definitely it's an interesting idea, like the possibility of replicating functionalities, meaning that if I target a specific function with an attack, there is a sort of backup which can take, which can be in charge. The trade-off is part of engineering in general, and it depends on the type of dApps that you are developing.
Okay, with no more questions and 15 minutes left, I wonder if we could take a look at the homework results.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Angela. So I read the submission and I posted like a quick summary on Discord as well. I received 4 submissions, which were very interesting and presented an understanding of the topics that we are studying together. The first one provided like a very good analysis from the system analyst perspective, the mentioning the adaptive natures, the possibility of having emergent behavior, and there was an explanation also on how decentralized applications are related and mirroring complex systems. So it was also nice because there was a comparison with the web 2.0 and the static application that we have. So the difference between static application and decentralized. Then the second submission.
Giuseppe, would it be possible to pull it up as a reference, because it would be easier to follow? I don't know if you have the chance. And of course, I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but if we have it anonymized, maybe, or praise the person who submitted it.
Okay, wait. I don't have here in the folder. I have anonymized in the comment. I will praise on Discord. Is it okay? And then
for sure.
During the last, also the last lecture, I will give the names. Also, in the last lecture, since I will give you the CSV files and also I will ask you to use the tool, that will be also interesting. Feel free to use the folder and submit the results. But I will prepare like a more detailed document for the, like, let's call it second task. The second submission, again, there were parallels with complex systems and all the information about the emergent behaviors, self-organizations, and that was quite interesting because there was mentioned the importance of avoiding GOP classes. That I'm repeating that concept quite often because it's key and it's fundamental to avoid, to delegate responsibility. I really like that submission. And the third one was very well structured as well. And there was an example, a practical example. Firecaster is the name that I didn't know. There was an example showing a practical example showing all the components, how all the components are connected, the different ecosystem as well. And the last one, not the last one, the last one in my order, was a very complete overview of the dynamic of complex systems and how these dynamics are integrated in the decentralized applications, and the parallel between complex network in nature, society, and the emergent behaviors, and the importance of using complexity from complex networks for analyzing and for understanding all these decentralized technologies and applications. So very good insights and good feedback also for me for understanding if you are following and understanding what I'm saying. So very, very nice reading the homework and the submission. I think you're muted, Angela.
Yeah, I was just wondering. Thanks again, everyone who submitted a homework result. I would be really keen to see them. So if there's a chance to share it, please sync with Giuseppe. If you have any doubts, otherwise we would share it with the group. I think it's 100% super valuable. These examples sounds really cool.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree. And now I didn't push a lot because we had 3 lectures very close to each other, and I know that these topics require time to be digested. But now, since there are 2 weeks, I will try to push a bit. So I will also start using chatting on Discord more, and I will provide hints because otherwise I would like to avoid forgetting everything, waiting for the last episode. So I'll try to stay in touch and to try to keep you engaged with all the topics that we explore.
Right, Giuseppe. So we'll sync right after the session to put together everything you have to know about the second homework assignment and all information. I mean, remember, we have the Study Season Information Hub where you can find all the recordings and also the materials session by session. And this should be always your reference point, your central point of information. And there you'll find the instructions. So we try to have them online in the course of this evening, I would say, Central European evening. So in the next hours.
Great. Thank you very much, all. And yeah, perfect.
That's it.
Stay in touch.
Yeah, we stay in touch. Thanks everyone for participating, and thanks for the great questions. I'm excited to see you all again in 2 weeks, and let's stay in touch on Discord. Thanks for today, Giuseppe and everyone.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.